The sound of silence on Christmas Eve is the loudest of all. My apartment, a makeshift studio where every roll of fabric tells a story of someone else's party, felt like a tomb. The only sparkle came from the lonely string of lights I'd wrapped around my old singer, a pathetic attempt to pretend the date meant something. The phone remained silent on the table, a monument to my son's broken promise. He had called earlier with the cold excuse of a holiday trip with my daughter-in-law. His voice, rushed as if my absence were a mere logistical detail. The pain of the final rejection, being traded for some random beach, was a knot tighter than any stitch my hands had ever made. I looked at my hands, gnarled with arthritis, and saw the map of a lifetime dedicated to him, from school uniforms to the alterations on his expensive suits. The smell of bitter coffee and dust permeated the air, a fragrance of abandonment. My machine, my companion through so many sleepless nights, was now just a piece of cold iron. The doorbell rang, a jolt that made my heart stumble. It was Anna, the 17-year-old neighbor from the apartment upstairs. She was holding an old dress, stained and frayed, the thin fabric trembling in her hands. Her eyes, large and tired, carried the weight of a responsibility that didn't belong to her age. She asked me, her voice choked, almost a whisper, if I could fix the garment for a job interview the next day. It was her only chance, her only hope of getting money for her sick grandmother's medicine. Looking at that girl was like seeing myself in a mirror from a distant past, full of fears and few choices. I can't pay you right now, Mrs. Elvira, but I swear as soon as I get paid, she began to say, humiliation coloring her face. The sight of that dress, a tattered rag that held all the hope in the world, and the desperation in Anna's eyes hit me with the force of a slap. In that exact moment, my son's abandonment became unbearable. He, who had everything, denied me a visit. She, who had nothing, asked for help with a dignity that broke my soul. The contrast between the expensive dress I imagined my daughter-in-law wearing on her trip and that stained piece of cloth was the perfect metaphor for my life. I had spent decades sewing for those who didn't value it, while true need knocked on my door, barefoot and voiceless, asking for a chance. Her sentence hung in the air, laden with a promise she might never be able to keep. Something inside me rebelled. The apathy that had consumed me since the phone call shattered like a thin needle under pressure. I took the dress from her hands, the rough, cold fabric against my skin. It was more than a repair. It was a calling. Your sewing is worth less than my time, a wealthy client once told me, throwing the bills on my table. Now, looking at Anna, I understood. My time, my art, my life were worth more than my family's contempt. That dress wasn't a work request. It was a rescue request. And in accepting it, I realized I wasn't just trying to save her. I was saving myself. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like, subscribe, and tell me which city you're watching from. I learned to sew from my mother, not as an art, but as a tool for survival. She used to say that a woman with a needle in her hand would never go hungry. She died young, and the sewing machine became my only inheritance, my anchor in a world that took everything from me, including a husband too young for the war. I raised my son alone, amidst fabric scraps and orders, staying up all night so he would have the most impeccable uniform in school, the graduation suit that would make him look like someone important. Every stitch was a silent promise that he would have a different life than mine, a life where he wouldn't have to mend his own dreams. He grew up, became this businessman who barely had time for his mother, and I remained here, sewing for others, waiting for a call that rarely came. My connection with Anna began subtly, with small gestures. One day, I fixed the tear in her only winter coat for free. On another occasion, I tailored a uniform for a temporary job she got. She would pay me with shy smiles and, sometimes, with a plate of hot food on days when loneliness weighed heaviest. I saw in her the granddaughter I never had, the strong girl that life had forced to grow up too fast. She cared for her grandmother with a dedication that moved me, the same dedication I once had for my son. Sewing became our secret language. During a blouse fitting, she would tell me about her exhaustion, about the fear of losing the only family she had left, and I would listen, running the measuring tape around her fragile body, wanting to protect her. The dialogues between us were simple, direct, without frills. "It's tight here in the chest," she would say, referring to the dress. But I knew she was talking about life. I would just nod, pinning a spot. "We'll figure it out," I would reply, and the promise applied as much to the fabric as to her anguish. The pauses, the glances we exchanged in the mirror's reflection, said more than 1,000 words. It was in those moments that I felt my existence still had a purpose. Her life was a succession of obstacles: her grandmother's illness, the bureaucracy to get aid, the jobs that paid a pittance, and the constant humiliation of depending on others' charity. She was a mirror of my own youth, a silent battle fought within the walls of an apartment too small for so many dreams. My own demons haunted me: the guilt of feeling angry at my son, the fear of confronting him and losing the little we still had. But the closeness to Anna began to ignite a new flame. External obstacles also appeared. Gossiping neighbors started to whisper, saying that the girl was taking advantage of the lonely old woman. One of them even told me at the building's entrance, "Be careful, Elvira. You reap what you sow." The malice hurt me, but it also strengthened my resolve. I knew the value of my work: R30 for a hem, R50 for a zipper. But what was Anna's dignity worth? What was the price of my own peace of mind? I had R12,000 saved up, a lifetime of savings. The overdue electricity bill was R95. That money was meant for my son, but now it had a different destination. Christmas morning arrived, cold and gray, but inside my apartment, something new was shining. I hadn't slept. I spent the night at my singer, not mending Anna's old dress, but creating a new one. I used the best fabric I had, a blue linen I'd been saving for years for a special occasion that never came. Every stitch was a prayer, a farewell to my past of servitude. When Anna knocked on the door, her eyes were sunken with exhaustion and worry. I handed her the dress, still warm from the iron. "Go get changed," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. She hesitated, looking at the garment with a disbelief that broke my heart. That dress wasn't a gift, it was armor. She returned from changing and stood before the old mirror in the living room. The blue dress, simple and elegant, transformed the girl in baggy clothes into a woman. Her posture changed, her shoulders straightened. For the first time, I saw Anna truly see herself. Silent tears began to roll down her face, not of sadness, but of pure emotion, a revelation. She saw herself as I saw her: strong, beautiful, worthy. "No one has ever done anything like this for me," she whispered, her voice choked. She turned and hugged me with a force that nearly took my breath away. In that embrace, I felt decades of loneliness and abandonment dissolve. The warmth of her body against mine was more real and comforting than any memory of a family love that no longer existed. In that hug, the final decision crystallized. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. It was rewriting the end of my story with my own hands. As soon as Anna left for her interview, renewed and full of hope, I picked up the phone. I searched the directory for the number of a free legal aid service I had seen on a flyer. A public defender answered, his voice sleepy from being disturbed on a holiday. I didn't hesitate. With a clarity that surprised me, I began to dictate my new wishes. The apartment, my sewing machine, my savings, everything I had built with needle and thread would now belong to Anna. My only condition was clear and irrevocable. She must use the money to finish her education. The lawyer asked questions, verified my lucidity, but my voice did not waver. I wasn't disinheriting a son. I was investing in a daughter that life had given me. Every word I spoke was a final stitch in my old life of hurt and a starting point for a new legacy. "Are you sure, Mrs. Elvira? This is a final decision?" he asked. "I'm more certain of this than anything else in my life," I replied. Hanging up that phone was the most liberating act I have ever experienced. I felt the weight of 78 years lift from my shoulders. I was no longer sewing to mend a painful past. I was using my last thread to weave a future. As the Christmas morning sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the colorful spools of thread. I knew I had made the right choice. The string of lights on my singer seemed to shine brighter. The loneliness was gone. My studio was no longer a sanctuary of forgotten memories, but the birthplace of a new story. A story where love is not measured by blood ties, but by the courage to weave hope into someone else's life. My needle was no longer a tool of survival, but a magic wand. And I, the forgotten old seamstress, finally felt like the protagonist of my own life, the author of my own testament of dignity. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now we continue with the video. Anna returned from the interview with a sparkle in her eyes I hadn't seen since I was a young dreamer myself. "I got it, Elvira. I got the job," she said, hugging me with the force of a hurricane of happiness. That blue dress wasn't just stitched fabric. It was a passport to dignity. With her first salary, she bought the most expensive medicines for her grandmother and started paying the overdue bills. Slowly, the tension in her face gave way to a serenity that money can't buy, the peace of being able to care for one's own. My small apartment became our refuge. In her spare time, I taught her how to sew. I started with the basics, threading the needle, making a straight stitch, sewing on a button. I wasn't just teaching a craft. I was sharing with her the secrets I learned in a lifetime of work. I showed her how sewing can be a form of expression, a way to transform a worthless scrap into something beautiful and useful. She learned quickly, her young, agile hands soon mastering the secrets of my old singer. Together, we started taking small orders from the neighborhood, mending clothes, creating simple pieces. The sound of the machine once again filled my days. But now, it was a melody of hope, not a lament of loneliness. The money we earned was ours, a fruit of our joint effort. For the first time, I didn't feel like an exploited provider, but a mentor, a partner. The neighbors who used to whisper now looked at us with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Anna's transformation was visible to everyone. She no longer walked with her head down, hidden in baggy clothes. She walked tall, with the confidence of someone who knows her worth. The news that I had taught her and given her a chance spread. Gradually, admiration replaced gossip. They saw that our relationship was not based on self-interest, but on genuine affection, a family we chose to build. The makeshift studio got a small, hand-painted sign on the door by Anna, Elvira and Anna, Seams and Repairs. It was a modest business, but to us, it was an empire. My life gained a new purpose. I was no longer the abandoned mother waiting for a call that would never come. I was the master, the grandmother of the heart, the woman who used her art to sow a future for someone who deserved it. The formalization of the will was just a bureaucratic detail. My true legacy was right there, alive, in Anna's joy, in the sound of the sewing machine, in our order book that was starting to fill up for the next month. I finally understood that the family that matters isn't the one defined by blood, but the one united by threads of respect, loyalty, and love. The love I wove for Anna was the same love she gave back, to me every day. 5 years passed. At 83, my hands no longer have the same steadiness, but my heart has never been more at peace. Anna, now a graduate in business administration, has transformed our small apartment into the Threads of Dignity community workshop. The space offers free courses for young people in the neighborhood, girls who, like her once, just need an opportunity. The sound of several sewing machines now fills the air, an orchestra of new beginnings. My son never contacted me again, but his absence no longer hurts. The void he left has been filled with laughter, the smell of new fabric, and the gratitude in the eyes of dozens of granddaughters who now surround me. Sitting in my rocking chair in the corner of the workshop, I watch them learn to sew their own destinies. Anna, now a leader in her community, oversees everything with the same sweetness and firmness I saw in her that Christmas Eve. She inherited more than my apartment and my machine. She inherited a purpose. The other day, one of the students with teary eyes showed me the first dress she managed to make on her own. She would wear it to her graduation. In that moment, the circle was complete. Anna's blue dress was the first piece of a much larger fabric, a patchwork quilt of second chances, woven with the threads of my love. I look at my old silver thimble, now kept in a small velvet box. It was passed down from my mother to me, and soon it will be passed to Anna. It is a symbol that the true inheritance is not in what we leave for people, but in what we leave in them. My hands, which once knew only hard work and the pain of rejection, learned to sew the most valuable of fabrics, the future. And that is a legacy that no betrayal can ever tear. Have you ever done a kind gesture that changed a life? Leave a little heart if you believe that love is more powerful than any wealth. Subscribe for more stories of second chances. Comment, "Love has no price," if you also believe in human kindness.